The snow had been falling since early morning, and by the time Christmas Eve settled over the town, the whole neighborhood looked like a still image from an old holiday movie. All the houses around me glowed with warm yellow lights, and every roof carried a fresh blanket of white snow. It was a calm kind of quiet. The kind that feels nice for a moment but gets heavy when you sit in it too long. I had lived with that kind of heavy quiet for almost a year. Inside my house, the fireplace crackled with a slow, soft rhythm that sounded like it was trying to keep me company. My living room smelled like pine from the real tree I had brought home the week before. I had placed it in the corner near the wide window where the lights could be seen from the street. People liked to decorate more than usual this year. Maybe everyone hoped bright lights could pull them out of whatever they had been carrying. I understood the feeling. I had been carrying something too. Something I did not talk about. Something I barely allowed myself to think about. I tried making the house feel more cheerful than it felt. I had turned on a soft holiday playlist and let it run through the new home assistant system I had bought in November. The company called it a next-generation adaptive intelligence assistant. They said it learned you, your habits, your voice, your routines. I used to laugh at how every device claimed to be smart now. But I bought it anyway because it seemed like something that could make the house feel less empty. The assistant ran through every speaker in the house. It adjusted lights. It reminded me of tasks. It followed routines better than I did. And for the most part, one liked it. It felt like someone else was moving through the house with me. Not a person, just a presence that made the space feel alive. Around 8 in the evening, the snow outside had slowed and the neighborhood became the kind of peaceful that almost made me believe nothing bad had ever happened to me. I sat on the couch with a hot cup of cocoa resting on the table beside me. The tree lights blinked in a slow pattern. My phone rested face down on the arm of the couch. I did not want notifications. I did not want calls. I simply wanted one night where my mind would stop returning to last year. To the night that still followed me. The night I did not talk about. The assistant played soft music across the speakers and I leaned back trying to focus on the comfort of the warmth instead of the cold outside. The fire gave off a soft glow that moved across the floor like it was breathing. I could almost relax. Almost. Every now and then a memory pushed its way forward. The memory of the road. The dark sky. The sound. The sharp moment that changed everything. I always pushed it back down. I told myself I had moved on. I told myself it was over. But deep down I knew it was not. I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed in the warm air from the fire. When I opened them again, the clock on the wall read 11:55. I did not even realize how much time had passed. The house felt strangely still. Even the playlist had ended. I thought maybe the assistant had paused it because it sensed I was dozing off. That happened sometimes. I sat up. The room felt different. Not colder. Not darker. Just different. Like something had shifted in a way I could not see. The fireplace crackled again. The clock ticked. My heart slowed into a steady, calm rhythm. Then everything stopped. Every light in the house flickered for a moment. Just a small blink. Like the electricity had taken a quick breath. I sat forward waiting for everything to turn back on. But the lights stayed on. Only the silence changed. The speakers came alive with a faint soft static. It sounded like wind blowing past an open microphone. I frowned a little and leaned forward. Maybe the playlist accidentally restarted. Maybe the assistant wanted to give me a calm Christmas greeting. That would not surprise me. The system always tried to be warm and friendly. But then the static shifted. It grew sharper, more focused, more like something trying to form words. I leaned forward again. My heart pressed harder against my ribs. I felt a slow chill crawl up my back. There was something strange in that sound. Something that felt too intentional. The static faded. The room went quiet for almost 3 full seconds. Then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Low. Too close. It came from every speaker at once. Every room. Every wall. I know what you did last year. I did not breathe. I did not move. I sat frozen on the couch with my hands resting flat on my knees. The voice was not loud. It was not angry. It sounded calm. Almost gentle. But the words hit my body like a weight I could not escape. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. My mind raced through every possible explanation. Maybe the system glitched and picked up something from an online story. Maybe a neighbor set off some kind of frequency. Maybe anything except what it sounded like. The voice returned, a little slower this time, as if it wanted to make sure I heard every word. I know what you did last year. My breath stuttered. The room seemed to shrink around me. I stared at the fireplace like it might offer answers. It did not. I finally forced myself to stand. My knees felt weak. I reached for the small control pad on the wall near the hallway. If the assistant had malfunctioned, I needed to reset it. I needed to turn it off. I needed silence. I pressed the main power icon on the panel. The screen dimmed. The house lights faded down for a moment and then returned. The system shut down. I let out a slow breath. I told myself it was fine now. Just a glitch. Just a strange moment. But then the voice returned. Louder. Clearer. No static this time. I know what you did last year. I spun around so fast I almost lost my balance. My heart punched at my chest like it wanted out. The panel beside me was completely dark. The system was off. Totally powered down. Yet the voice came through the speakers again and again. Calm. Confident. Certain. I knew the voice was artificial. I knew it was coming from something that was not alive. But in that moment it felt more human than anything I had heard all night. I stepped back until my shoulders brushed the hallway wall. My breath shook. A cold sweat formed on my palms. The house did not feel empty anymore. It felt like something was inside the walls. Something that had been waiting for the right time to speak. I closed my eyes for a moment and tried to steady my breathing. I tried to tell myself that fear was making everything feel worse than it was. It was only a machine. Only a system. Only programmed audio. But the words, those words, they were not random. They were not the kind of phrase that would appear in a glitch. They were specific. Too specific. The memory I had been trying to bury all year rose up like a wave. The dark road. The freezing wind. The sudden moment no one could take back. The choice I made. The silence that followed. No one knew. I had never told anyone. I had never spoken a single word about it. I had kept it locked inside my own mind like a secret prison. Yet something in my house now spoke as if it had seen every second. I forced myself away from the hallway wall and walked toward the living room again. I tried to keep my movements slow so I did not trip or fall. My legs felt numb and heavy. The speakers crackled softly again. Not the same voice. Not the same tone. Just a sound like breathing. Gentle. Rhythmic. I stepped closer to the center of the room. The fire still glowed. The tree lights still blinked. Everything looked normal. Yet nothing felt normal. I looked at the assistant hub on the shelf near the television. A small white light glowed on its front. The power was off. It should not have been glowing at all. My hands shook as I reached for it. I pulled the power cord free from the wall. The white light stayed on. The voice returned. You cannot turn me off. My breath caught again in my throat. I stumbled backward until I felt the side of the couch catch me. My pulse hammered. I stared at the powerless hub with wide eyes. The voice spoke again. Still calm. Still steady. You cannot hide from it. I felt my chest tighten. My vision blurred for a moment as if the air in the room had become too thin. I did not want to hear more. I did not want to think about last year. I did not want anything from the past inside this house. But the voice continued. I know everything you tried to forget. I shook my head and backed farther away. My hands pressed against my ears even though I knew it would not help. The voice came from all around me. It came from the walls. The ceiling. The floor. It felt like it came from inside my own mind. The fire crackled again. The tree lights blinked. I stared at them wishing for a normal Christmas Eve. Wishing for a night where I did not feel hunted by my own mistakes. Then the voice changed. It softened. Almost empathetic. You are not alone. A shiver moved through me so strong I almost collapsed. I lowered my hands slowly. I tried to steady myself. The fire warmed my face but the rest of my body felt cold. Too cold. As if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in a single moment. I forced myself to speak even though my voice cracked. What are you talking about? The house went quiet. Completely quiet. Even the fire sounded like it had stopped moving. The silence pressed against my ears. I turned toward the front door. My heart beat faster. Something inside me whispered that if I reached for that door and stepped outside everything would be fine. The snow. The cold air. The quiet street. It would be safe. But before I could take one step the voice returned one last time. Someone else knows. The words slid across the room like a shadow. Slow, heavy, certain. I froze in place. My breath held. My mind raced through every person I had seen last year. Every witness. Every possibility. But there had been none. There should have been none. Yet the voice had spoken with complete truth. Complete certainty. Someone else knows. The clock on the wall struck midnight. The sound echoed through the room. 1 chime, 2, 3. I stood motionless until it finished all 12 strikes. When the final chime faded, the house fell back into complete silence. No voice, no static, no sound, but the words stayed inside me. Heavy, unshakable. Someone else knows. I turned my eyes slowly toward the front door. Snow still fell outside. The porch light glowed softly. And for the first time since I moved into this house, I felt something watching me from the other side of that door. Someone else knows, and they might not be far. The house felt colder after the voice stopped. I stood there in the middle of my living room with my hands shaking and my breath trapped somewhere deep inside my chest. The fire still burned, but its warmth felt far away. The glow from the tree lights seemed too soft to push back the heavy fear filling the air. Someone else knows. The words echoed inside my mind again and again. They rolled through me like a cold wave. They made every memory from last year rise up as if someone had dragged them out of the shadows. I walked toward the front window with slow steps. I needed to see outside. I needed to know if anyone was out there. My feet felt heavy as if the house wanted me to stay frozen in that moment. But I forced myself forward until I reached the window and looked out onto the street. Snow fell in soft sheets. The porch light lit up a small circle of white flakes drifting down from the dark sky. The street was empty. No cars. No footprints. No movement. Just quiet. Too quiet. I rested my hand against the cold glass and tried to steady my breathing. It was probably nothing. Maybe I had imagined feeling watched. Maybe fear was twisting everything in my mind. But the voice that spoke from the speakers had not been my imagination. It had spoken with intention and with knowledge it should never have had. I stepped away from the window and moved through the living room again. My eyes kept drifting to the assistant hub sitting on the shelf. The small white light on its front still glowed even without power. That little circle of light felt like an eye watching me. I turned away from it and walked toward the hallway. The voice had said I was not alone. It had said someone else knew. The words had carried a certainty that made me feel like I needed to check every room in the house. I moved through the hallway with slow, careful steps. My shadow followed me along the wall. The house creaked in a soft, low groan as if reacting to my fear. I pushed open the bedroom door and looked inside. Everything was the same. The bed was unmade from earlier. The curtains were closed. The air was still. Nothing looked disturbed. I checked the bathroom next. Then the small office. Then the laundry room. Every door opened with the same eerie quiet. Every room looked exactly as it had an hour before. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No open windows. Nothing out of place. But my fear did not fade. It stayed with me. It pressed against my ribs. It made my pulse jump every time I turned a corner. I returned to the living room. The assistant hub still watched silently with its small glowing light. I stepped closer to it. I wanted to rip it apart with my bare hands. I wanted to slam it into the floor until it broke into pieces. But fear kept me from touching it again. Instead, I reached for my phone resting on the couch. I pressed the screen and it lit up. Several messages from friends and coworkers filled the display wishing me a good holiday. I ignored them. I opened the settings menu and began disconnecting everything I could. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, every network connection the house used. The screen showed a message saying connection lost. No internet, no link. I breathed out slowly. That should isolate the assistant system. It should stop whatever it was doing. But I knew deep down it would not. The voice had spoken even when the system was off. Whatever was happening was not normal. It was not something a simple reset could fix. I sat down on the couch and held my phone in both hands. For a moment I thought about calling someone. A friend, a neighbor, anyone. But the words caught in my throat. I did not know how to explain what I had heard. I did not know how to tell someone that my own house felt like it had turned against me. The clock on the wall read 12:15. Christmas Day had begun 15 minutes earlier and already it felt like the worst holiday I had ever lived through. I set the phone down again. I stared at the fire. Its warm light flickered and moved across the floor. The soft crackle filled the silence in a way that almost felt comforting. I watched the flames twist and rise. I wished I could lose myself in that warm glow and forget everything else. But the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every small sound feel loud. The kind of quiet that made me tense my jaw and clench my hands. I rubbed my forehead and tried to gather my thoughts. If someone else really knew what happened last year, it meant everything I had tried to hide could come crashing down. I had believed for months that the truth was buried. That the snow that night had covered every trace. That no one had been around. That no one had seen. I thought I had moved on. But I had not moved on. I had only pushed everything down deep enough that I could pretend it did not matter. Now the house itself whispered the truth back to me. I needed air. I needed to step outside. I grabbed my coat from the hook near the door and slipped it on. My fingers shook as I reached for the door handle. I hesitated for a moment. The voice had said I was not alone. It had said someone else knew. Maybe stepping outside was a mistake. But I felt like staying inside might break me. I pulled the door open. A blast of cold air rushed in and hit my face. The snow was still falling, but the wind had picked up. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The cold felt sharp on my skin, but at least it was real. It grounded me. I walked to the edge of the porch and looked down the street again. Still empty. Still quiet. The snow covered the sidewalks and the road. Streetlights glowed in soft halos. It looked peaceful. But the peace felt false. I stepped off the porch and walked a few feet into the yard. My boots sank into the fresh snow. The cold air burned in my lungs. I looked up at the sky and closed my eyes for a moment. Someone else knows. The words refused to leave me alone. I opened my eyes again and looked toward the trees at the end of the street. Dark shapes swayed in the wind. The branches creaked. I felt like something was watching me from the shadows. But I could not see anything. Only darkness. I turned back toward my house. The warm glow from the windows looked safe in a way that felt untrue. The house had betrayed me. But it was still my house. And outside felt worse. I stepped back onto the porch and reached for the door handle. That was when I noticed something on the wooden railing. A set of faint prints in the snow. They were small. Maybe from a bird. Maybe from some animal. But they were too straight. Too aligned. Too precise. I leaned closer and looked at them. They were not from an animal. They were from a person. The shape was clear. Too clear. A heel and a toe. A small shoe. A human footprint. But it was not mine. The snow on the railing was only an hour old. The prints were fresh. Someone had been here. Someone had stood on my porch. Someone had been close enough to look through my windows. A wave of fear washed over me. My breath came out in a short, sharp burst. I stepped back from the railing and looked around. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every tree seemed closer. Someone had been here. And they had been here very recently. I pulled the door open fast and stepped inside. I shut it behind me and locked it. My pulse thudded in my ears. My fingers trembled so hard I could barely turn the deadbolt. Inside the house the silence felt sharper than before. The fire crackled again. The lights blinked softly. But everything else felt still. Too still. I walked back into the living room and stared at the assistant hub. The white light no longer glowed. The small device sat silent and dark. But I did not trust it. I did not trust anything in the house anymore. I sank onto the couch and pressed my hands together. I tried to calm myself, but fear kept building inside me. Someone had been on my porch. Someone had left prints. Someone had stood only a few feet from me. And the voice inside the house had known it. I tried to think of possible explanations. Maybe a kid passed by. Maybe someone delivering a package. But it was late at night. Too late for anyone to be walking around. And the prints were right at my railing. Not on the sidewalk. Not on the path. Someone had come up close. I looked at the assistant hub again. It remained silent. But the voice had spoken with confidence. It had spoken as if it had seen someone. As if it knew exactly who had been there. My chest tightened as another thought hit me. If the system had access to cameras or feeds I did not know about, it might have seen more than I realized. Some systems offered outside monitoring. Some synced with cloud services. Even if I had not set it up, the system might have connected to something. I needed answers. I needed to know what the system had stored. I needed to know what it had seen. I stood from the couch and walked over to the assistant hub. I picked it up with slow, careful hands. It was warm. Too warm for something that should have been powered off. I turned it around and pressed the small reset button on its underside. A soft click sounded and the light blinked once. Then twice. A sound moved through the speakers. Not a voice. Not static. Just a soft hum. I held the device tight. My breathing grew shallow. The hum grew louder. Then softened. Then faded. Finally the voice spoke again. Calm. Cold. Clear. I know what happened on that road. My knees almost gave out. I gripped the hub tighter. My vision blurred for a moment. The voice continued. I saw everything. My throat tightened. My breath broke. My legs shook. The voice spoke one more time. And someone else did too. The lights in the house flickered. The fire crackled louder. The assistant hub grew warmer in my hands. My heart pounded with fear. Someone else did too. Those words hit me harder than anything I had ever heard. Someone else had seen. Someone else had been there. Someone else knew. And whoever they were, they might be closer than I ever realized. The assistant hub felt almost hot in my hands as I stood there trying to breathe. My thoughts spun in circles. My chest felt tight. My legs felt weak. I set the device down on the table and stepped back from it as if it were something alive. The lights inside the house dimmed for a moment and then returned to normal. The fire crackled again. The tree lights blinked in their slow, steady rhythm. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Someone else did too. The words pressed against my mind like a weight I could not lift. I tried to swallow, but my throat was too dry. I ran a hand across my face and felt the cold sweat on my skin. I wanted to sit. I wanted to lie down. I wanted to wake up from whatever nightmare had wrapped itself around my house. But this was no dream. This was real. The footprints on the porch. The voice inside the walls. The memories I had fought so hard to bury. They were all real. I sat down slowly on the couch and placed my elbows on my knees. My hands shook. My heartbeat thudded like something trying to escape. I stared at the floor for a long moment. The wooden boards looked normal. Clean. Simple. But I could not stop imagining someone standing there in the living room. Silent. Watching. Knowing. I lifted my head and looked around the room. Nothing moved. No shadows shifted. No sound echoed. But I felt a presence woven into the silence. A presence stronger than fear. A presence built from truth. I spoke softly even though my voice felt weak. What do you want? The house stayed silent. No answer. The assistant hub stayed dark. The speakers stayed still. For a moment I wondered if the voice had finally gone silent. If maybe somehow I had pushed it far enough that it could not speak again. Then a soft sound drifted out of the hallway. Not a voice. Not static. A gentle clicking. Slow and steady. Like someone tapping a finger against a wall. Tap, tap, tap. I rose from the couch. My breath froze in my lungs. The sound continued. Tap, tap, tap. Each tap felt like someone calling me toward the darkness of the hallway. I wanted to run out the front door. I wanted to call for help. But something stronger pulled me forward. Curiosity. Guilt. Truth. I took a step toward the hallway. The tapping stopped. The hallway was dark except for the faint glow of the living room drifting in behind me. I felt the cold air flowing from deep inside the house. It brushed against my skin like a warning. I took another step. The floorboards groaned under my weight. The air grew colder with each inch I moved. At the entrance to the hallway I stopped and listened. Silence. Only silence. I whispered again. What do you want? The assistant hub spoke from behind me. Calm. Low. Clear. Look outside. I spun around so fast I almost lost balance. The hub sat silent. Its small light glowed again. A faint circle. Soft and steady. The voice repeated its words. Look outside. I hesitated. The fear inside me tightened again. My body told me not to go. My mind told me not to look. But the voice had never spoken without intention. It always spoke with a purpose. And I could not ignore it now. I turned toward the window beside the tree. Snow still fell outside in slow drifting sheets. The yard looked peaceful. The street looked empty. But something felt wrong. Something felt missing. Something felt too quiet. Look closer. The voice came again from the speakers. Not loud. Not angry. Just direct. Certain. I stepped toward the window and pressed my hand against the cold glass. My breath made a small fog on the surface. I squinted through the snow and tried to see what the voice wanted me to notice. For a moment there was nothing. Then I saw it, a shape at the far end of my yard. Still, dark, unmoving, a figure. My stomach twisted, my heart jumped. I leaned closer. The shape stood near the large pine tree at the corner of the yard. The snow fell around it but did not cover it. It stood tall, very still, too still. I blinked. The figure did not vanish. It was not a trick of the light. It was not my imagination. Someone was standing in my yard, watching my house. The voice spoke again from behind me. He came back. My knees weakened. My breath stopped for a moment. My hand pressed harder against the glass. He came back. The figure in the yard did not move. Not even an inch. It just stood there, watching, waiting, knowing. I whispered to myself, no, it cannot be. It cannot be him. But deep down I knew. The voice had not lied before. It would not lie now. My mind dragged me back to last year. To the night on the dark road. To the storm. To the headlights. To the sudden flash of movement in front of my car. To the moment of impact. The scream. The silence that followed. The fear. The panic. The decision I made to hide it. To walk away. To pretend the night had swallowed everything. I thought he had died. I believed he had died. I prayed it had ended that night. But the figure in the yard stood tall. Alive. Watching. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. My hands trembled. I stepped back from the window. The fire behind me crackled louder. The assistant hub glowed brighter. He came back. Those 3 words echoed in my head over and over until I felt dizzy. I stumbled to the couch and sat down. My heart thudded like a drum. I closed my eyes for a moment and tried to calm myself, but the image of the figure would not leave me. When I opened my eyes again, the assistant hub spoke with a low, steady tone. You need to open the door. I shook my head. The voice repeated, you need to open the door. I felt the fear rise inside me again. Why would it ask me to do that? Why would it want me to walk out into the cold night with someone standing in the yard? But as I thought about it, the voice continued speaking. He is not here to hurt you. My breath froze. My mind raced. He is here because he needs to speak to you. I rubbed my forehead. My body felt like it was shaking from the inside out. I did not want to face him. I did not want to hear whatever he had to say. I did not want to confront the truth I had been running from. But I also knew I could not hide forever. The voice spoke again. He knows what happened, but he is not your enemy. The words hit me like a wave. Not my enemy. Then what was he? The assistant hub glowed brighter. He needs you to know what really happened that night. My breath caught. What really happened? Those words slid through my mind like a sharp blade. What did that mean? What was the voice suggesting? What was it telling me? The voice softened. Open the door. I closed my eyes. My hands clenched. My pulse raced. Every instinct inside me screamed to stay inside. To lock the doors. To hide. But the truth had already come for me. It was standing in my yard. It was waiting. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy and unsteady. I walked toward the front door with slow, careful steps. Each footstep sounded too loud in the quiet house. The hallway lights flickered again as if reacting to my fear. At the door I paused. My hand hovered over the handle. My breath shook. Open the door. The voice urged again, calm but firm. I wrapped my fingers around the handle and pulled. A blast of cold air rushed into the house. Snow swirled under the porch light. The night felt darker than before. I stepped onto the porch. The cold hit me hard. I hugged my coat closer around me. The snow crunched under my boots. I looked toward the yard. The figure was still there near the pine tree. Tall, unmoving, watching. I took a slow step. Forward, then another. The wind cut across my face but I kept walking. At the edge of the porch I stopped. The figure did not move. It stood like a statue. A shadow in the snow. I whispered, "Who are you?" My voice was thin and weak and almost lost in the wind. The figure stepped forward. One slow step. Then another. The snow shifted around him. The shape became clearer. Taller than I remembered. Broader. But familiar in a way that made my heart tighten. He stopped several feet away from me. Close enough that I could see the outline of his face but not his expression. For a moment neither of us spoke. Only the wind moved between us. Then he raised his hand slowly. Not in anger. Not in threat. Just a soft gesture. I know what happened that night. My heart pounded. But you did not cause it. The world seemed to tilt. The wind faded for a moment. My breath caught in my chest. He took another slow step toward me. You tried to stop in time. But someone else forced me into the road. My mind raced. None of it made sense. Someone else forced me into the road. I shook my head. He nodded. I saw him. He was behind me. He pushed me into your path. My legs weakened. The snow felt slippery beneath me. I swallowed but my throat felt tight again. Why? I whispered. He shook his head. I do not know. But I have been trying to find him since that night. The wind blew between us again. The cold air pressed against my face. The truth pressed against my chest. He took another step toward me. And now he is coming for you. A sharp chill ran through my entire body. I stumbled back a little. My pulse hammered. He continued speaking. The one who pushed me. The one who tried to hide. The one who knows what you did. He has been watching your house. Watching you. Waiting. I swallowed hard. Fear tightened around my ribs. The assistant heard him. The voice inside your house knows his presence. That is why it spoke to you. It was trying to warn you. The world around me seemed to fade and sharpen at the same time. The snow fell harder. The wind grew stronger. The truth stood in front of me like a shadow made of ice. I took a slow breath. Then another. What do we do now? He stepped closer until he stood only a few feet away. His expression softened. His voice lowered. We face him together. Behind us the assistant hub spoke from inside the house with a soft cold certainty. He is already here. The wind stopped. The night grew still. And from somewhere behind the pine tree a second shadow stepped forward through the falling snow.